This video is the second part of the inheritance lesson. On the first video, I talked about the reason and I also showed some diagrams to explain the needs for inheritance. On this video, I'm going to show the code of inheritance. As always, I'm going to create a project. And it's always an empty project. And now, let's go over the class view. So my class view is right here, but if you don't have it, go to View and Class View. I'm going to add the base class, which will be my weapon class. And if you remember from the PowerPoint, the base class, the weapon, has your round capacity, range, and round type. Round capacity is going to be an integer. Everything is going to be an integer, just for simplicity. But you can choose whatever data type you want. So for the class weapon, that's all. And moving to our next class, the next class was our Code 45 class, and it had the same thing plus the holster type. So I'm going to create another class, add class, and this class is going to be called Code 45, and the base class, now that's something new, the base class is going to be the weapon, because the Code 45 inherits the weapon class. So right here on base class, I'm going to put the weapon class. Finish. On the Code 45 class, all I do here is I inherit the base class. So this is your class and this is the inheritance. Besides this inheritance here, everything in this class is just like any other class. So in this class, we also need the holster type. And the holster type, I'm going to use string. You can use whatever you want to use. I'm going to use a string here. But in order for me to use a string, I need to include the string class. So include my string class. And now I also need my namespace standard. And now the code is just fine. So we're not implementing any function, but you can implement function. This is the weapon class. Again, no functions here. So going in the main, let's do some tests here. So I'm going to include the weapon and also going to include the code 45 header. Now I can use both classes. So let's take a look at the difference. So weapon, and then inside the weapon, if I use the dot notation, I have access to the range, round capacity, and round type. Those are the three variables that I have inside the weapon. Now, if I do the same with the code 45, and using the dot notation, now I have access to the holster type, which is the variable from the code 45 class, but I also have access to the range, round capacity, and round type. And if you remember, those are from the weapon class. But because the code 45 class inherits the weapon class, then whenever you declare the code, whenever you create a code 45 object, it has access to the weapon class as well. So deleting here, and I can also delete the weapon class from the includes. I don't need it because the code 45 takes care of it for us. So code 45, now I have the C. The C is my object, C dot holster type. Remember, this is a string, so I'm going to put I don't know, leather for whatever reason. And then C dot not holster type, C dot range is going to be 100 yards, whatever. And then if we want to print the holster type, we just do C dot holster type, and that prints our holster type from the code 45. So let's run the program. Leather. So for now we only have two classes here. We have the weapon, which is the base class, and the code 45. But going back to the slides, we also had a M4, and the difference was the 4 grip. So let's implement the M4 class as well. Going back to my class view, right click on my project and add a class. And the class is M4, and the base class is weapon. I'm not going to put anything here, but I'm going to do it manually later. So I'm going to finish, and here is my M4 class, and I'm going to manually inherit the weapon class. And if you remember, the only difference between the code 45, the only difference between a class that implements and a class that doesn't implement is this column and then public weapon. And also you need to include the header right here on the top. So going to my M4, right in front of M4, but it doesn't know what weapon, so let's make sure we include the header, and now we got no problem. It knows which weapon it is. So this is how you manually inherit a class. And if you remember, the M4 has a foregrip. And the foregrip is going to be a string as well. So string foregrip. Again, it doesn't know what a string is. So let's make sure we tell them what kind of string. So it is a string. And also namespace standard. And now the compiler is happy. So let's go to the main and instantiate a object type M4 now this time. So M4 let's include the M4 header, and then M4 M dot, remember the foregrip from the M4 class, the range, round capacity, and round type comes from the weapon class. So foregrip equals, I don't know what kind of foregrip. It's going to be a cool foregrip. You can also put M dots round capacity, and round capacity for M4 is going to be, I don't know, 200 rounds. And you can print M dot foregrip, and also you can print M dot round capacity, and let's see what happens. So ladder, this ladder came from the code 45, and then for the M4 we have a cool foregrip and 200 is the round capacity. And now let's implement the last class, and the last class, if you remember, was the M240B, the weapon that women like. So let's implement that, and the difference was the tripods, or whatever this thing here is, unipods, I don't know what it's called. So let's implement the class here. I go back to my class view, or this time let's create a class and without the class view right here in the Solution Explorer. So right click, add a class, add, the class name is M240B, the base name is weapon, but remember you can ignore this for now if you want to, and then manually add later, and then finish. So now I have my M240B class, and this class inherited the weapon class. And if you remember, the only thing that's difference here is the tripods. This guy is going to be a integer, and it's a tripod integer. No difference function. And let's go to the main program, and let's instantiate also the M240B, a good gun for girls. So M2, we did not include, did we? No, we did not. So let's include M240B. So now we can use this M240B. Ladies gun, and the ladies gun dot tripod equals 300. So if I want to print that, cout ladies gun dot tripod and line and line, and 300 is the tripod from the ladies gun. So that's about it for inheritance. There's a lot more in inheritance that I can cover here in 15-20 minutes. And for these examples here, for these codes, I just used the public, and also I just used variables. But you can also use private, and you can also start creating functions in your classes that are unique to the class that it's inheriting, or also on the base class.